everyone's pretty much in agreement that you can't really criticize the forward group, right? You got guys like me saying, I wish Tom Wilson was there. Who cares? Who ultimately cares? Even the blue line, where there's been some nitpicking from myself included, and especially the chart boys who are all over Colton Parayko. Ultimately, the blue line is deep and solid and looks just as good as any other country, and I still think is going to be better than Team USA's, which people are pointing to on paper and going like, look, yeah, a lot of those guys, good point getters, good puck movers. We'll see. We will see. We will see. The goaltending, you just look across the board, and that's the one area where Canada is clearly behind every other country. And can Jordan Binnington get hot? Yeah, we've seen it before. Is Aiden Hill, as our friend Kevin Woodley said, the type of goaltender that could end up fitting the mold for Team Canada? Absolutely, he could be. Really, what we're doing here is a dry run for the Olympics. And there's not going to be time to turn this sucker around. There's no player that's sitting out with an injury here. There's no one that you're looking at and saying, well, this guy's 1 year away from being on the... Like, that ain't the thing. So what you're going to see in this tournament is what you're going to get when, I'll say it, it's going to be more meaningful in the Olympics. When all of the nations are there. When it does feel like the true blue return to international hockey. And so... it's going to be a big point of conversation. A lot of people are going to kind of mull over it and decide whether or not Canada's even going to be able to stand a chance in this tournament, given the discrepancy in that. But ultimately, that will be the major thing is, hey, can these guys look passable enough? Does the roster look dominant in a way? Can they outscore maybe some of these problems? And can they answer for the difference with the most important position with the only player that stays on the ice for the entirety of the game? Anyways, James Mirtle, senior writer at The Athletic, joins me now. What's up, buddy? How we doing?
I'm good. Good. So good little rant there.
Thank you. That's what I do for a living. I do these little rants. I do these little talkies off the top of shows. I go, here's a little thought I had, and then we go. Then we start. So, let's just start with this. Very, very broad strokes. What do you think of the roster?
I think it's about what we expected, right?
Yeah,
like,
pretty much.
There's like Travis Sanheim is a surprise.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I like you said, there's not a whole lot I can quibble with there around the edges, and I think they made some smart decisions thinking ahead a little bit to the Olympics as opposed to naming some of the elder statesmen. Like they could have named, I mean, I don't know how close he is, but like Drew Doughty or John Tavares or Stamkos or these guys, and made some legacy picks as they've done in the past. But I think they're looking ahead, and that makes lots of sense. And the goaltending is going to be the biggest thing. And this has been brewing for a long time in Canada. I remember I did a big project for the Globe and Mail 11 years ago, and it was looking at what's wrong with goaltending in Canada, and it's in such a much worse place now than it was 11 years ago. And I don't know that there's any hope in sight. You know, the Americans are the country that's really come on in goal. You know, they were never really a goalie-producing nation. You go back 15, 20 years ago, it was like Mike Richter and Beesbrook, and they didn't have the depth there. And now it's unbelievable. You look at the guys that the Americans haven't brought, and they're so good. It's incredible.
Yeah, no, they're much, much, much deeper in that. Russia, not there, much, much, much deeper in that. You go across the board, every country has unquestionably far better top-tier talent. And yeah, again, Canada is at the point where, I talked to Kevin Woodley about this a couple of weeks ago, where they're sending people down to the States to evaluate the ways that they're developing goaltenders. We're at the point where they're trying to pull Joel Embiid moves and grab Joey Decord to try and be Team Canada's goaltender and funnel him a passport so that they can have somebody who I wouldn't even view as like an all-star in the league to have him in net. That's how things are shaping up for Canada. So I don't think that this is going to be an immediately fixable problem, right? Like I just mentioned, it's not going to change going into this Olympic cycle. What I do have hope for, I guess, is if it does cost Team Canada, and we've always made the jokes about goalie summit, right? This has been around for quite some time, but that they start to really address some of the costs, especially for minor league players. I just remember what it took for me to be a goalie as a kid. And that was, God, a million years ago at this point. And the idea of how hard it is to shop around for secondhand equipment, how, a gear for you at a rink is pretty much unavailable once you pass, I think, Adams, or at least it was for me. I don't know how much better that's gotten. Maybe I can ask around.
it's different in different regions and stuff.
Sure.
Is the way that it works. Yeah.
Sure, but even still, when you're a kid, you end up wanting to have your own gear. You want to show up to the arena and have your stuff and not use the equipment that is provided to you. But there's got to be some way of figuring this out so that parents of goaltenders are not bearing the immense burden of this cost, that these camps are less expensive, that, like the development is better. Because what is very, very clear here is we're doing something wrong, and I do think that there's a lot of problems with the sport in general when it comes to costs. I don't think that it's cheap for any parent. I think that the sport is intimidating financially for a lot of people, especially given that the better your kid gets, the more expensive it just automatically becomes, right? It's like, hey, here's your reward. We think your kid is really good. Fork over tens of thousands of dollars for them to develop in this country. Like, something is broken here. But with goaltenders especially, God, I really do hope that the conversations that come out of this tournament, if Canada does fail, is that, hey, you know what? We still care about this sport. This is something that still unifies us as a people. It's something that even if you didn't grow up with hockey, is very inclusive in terms of bringing you into the fold as a Canadian. And I like, it's important. It's important to the national identity. And I think we do have to figure out different ways of approach if it's going to maintain to be the national game of Canada.
Yeah. And, you look at the European approach is really like the kind of local club system. And there is, costs offset in terms of the equipment. There's more communal equipment. And also, my understanding in Sweden and Finland is that the cost of the goalie equipment is borne by the whole team. It's spread among everybody because you have to have goalies to have a team, right? So it doesn't make sense to put all that burden on one family or one kid. And the other thing that they do in the club system is they kind of have like goalie skill development days so they have a practice that's just for goalies because, as you know really well, essentially the goalies are playing a completely different sport. Like they're not really playing hockey. I mean, they are, but they're doing something completely different. Like it has nothing really other than wearing skates and having a stick. It doesn't have anything to do with what anyone else is doing.
They're different skates.
Yeah. And the thing that always has blown my mind being around NHL teams is that even at the NHL level, the head coaches usually, unless they're a former goalie, usually don't know anything about goaltending. And they say that. They're like, yeah, he stopped the pucks. And one of the things that you hear a lot talking to goalie experts in Canada is that there hasn't been, the goalies have been an afterthought. Too often the coaches and the people around the game haven't known anything about goaltending. And the kids just, the coach just says, yeah, go in there and like stop the puck. And his practice is just, has to be found somewhere else. So that's another thing and I know that Hockey Canada has talked about this because I talked to them about it, more than a decade ago, but it just, whatever they've been doing hasn't been working.
Listen, I'm not a special case here, but I can tell you that as we're having this conversation, I'm thinking about some of the quote unquote coaching I got to play the position as a kid. And it was not exactly overly instructive until you went to goalie schools, right? Until you went to goalie camps. And then you actually got training. Then you actually got real coaching. But again, that's a completely separate thing from the thing that you're doing. And also, again, the sport that you're paying for, where all these other kids are getting coached up, where all these other kids are getting that kind of, meaningful insight into the game and those repetitions, you as a kid in the net are sort of left on your own. You are there on an island. And I can tell you, it's an appealing position for some, but also, eventually you start to look back on it and go, hey, was this the right decision? And I don't know. It just, it's not the easiest thing to do. So, yeah, we got to figure out a way to make this thing better, to make the training better, and to make it, more inclusive for kids. Because this sport just cannot be what it has become, which is simply for the rich. And it's like the understated thing around hockey, and sometimes people bring it up, but it's very true. It's just like the more money you have, the more likely it is that your kid is going to be a good hockey player. And we've got to figure out a way to balance that equation because it's especially happening now in net. Anyways, let's move on. Any other thoughts on this roster? Like any other major talking points that you want to address with this team?
I got to be honest, I'm drawing a blank. There's a couple defensemen that I think I would have picked over some of the guys they did. Like, sure. I really like Mackenzie Weegar in Calgary, but it's splitting hairs. Like, honestly, I think the other thing that they're going to have to think about, like, they're bringing Stone, they're bringing Pietrangelo. Like, there's some of the guys are long in the tooth, and that's something that they're going to have to worry about. I like the Americans roster better overall, and I don't think it's just in goal. The U.S. This is the best U.S. team by far that we've ever seen. So, and this is really going to be the rivalry in international competition now. Is going to be Canada-U.S. Like it's not the Russia-Canada thing is for multiple reasons is basically dead.
Yeah,
and the Americans are
it'll be back.
It's back in a big way, yeah. And I know there's not a lot of juice in this tournament, and people are looking at it as like an exhibit. But I think for those Canada-U.S. games, it's going to be like it is on the women's side. Like it's going to be appointment viewing, no matter what, every time these teams play, building up to the Olympics next year.
Yeah, I was kind of making a similar point on Leafs Talk last night about how you could just call this thing the Two Nations Cup because that Canada-USA game is going to be everything. And I do think that it is going to spark something in us, especially the people who, love hockey and were essentially raised on the import of and the crushing disappointment of certain Olympic and international losses. That it's going to be a holy crap, we didn't realize what we were missing until it was here. And so I understand people's cynical approaches and the whole it's a made-up tournament and Russia's not there and it's only a few games and why should I care? It's like, trust me, I think that if you love hockey, if you love hockey, you're going to feel a sense of pride if Canada beats the United States. You are going to care about it when Canada laces them up, steps out on the ice against the Americans, and has to prove once again that this is our sport against a country with a incredibly massive population discrepancy from us. So no, it's going to matter. It is absolutely going to matter, and it is going to, again, remind us of what we've been missing. For me, the only other real thing is I'm very, very interested to see who they play some of these top guys with, because when you see the line projections, right, you go, this isn't necessarily what it actually is. This is just where they put the names down. But I can't wait to see who they play with McDavid. And I can't wait to see if they do put Sidney Crosby and Nathan McKinnon and Brad Marchand together. Like if they, in a very, very short tournament, how are you going to try and make the lines knowing that you don't have the luxury of time to try to figure out chemistry? So that's the real point of fascination to me, too, is out of this deep forward core that has so many names where, our team here at Sportsnet made a secondary Team Canada. How are you going to balance the minutes? Who are going to be the guys? Who's going to be the Rick Nash of this tournament, right? Where they emerge as a more beloved figure who kind of maybe takes this tournament by the reins and runs away with it. And who do the super duper stars play and how much do they play? Cannot wait. Cannot freaking wait. It's going to be so good. It's going to be good. It's going to be good. It's going to be good. I'm sorry. I'm into it now. Anyways, you want to move to Leafs?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, let's stick with goaltending because you wrote an article on it. And I think the article is very good because it really does point out everyone can understand how good the Leafs goaltending is this season, right? You don't need to be a brain genius, but you really do a great case of outlining just how different this is from teams in the past. Because I think people would look at it and go, well, they had hot stretches of Campbell. Well, they had some good iterations of Freddie Anderson. Well, they've had some good stretches of goaltending. It's like this is way, 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 way better than anything we've seen here in this era.
Yeah, they haven't had a season. Basically, what I lay out in the piece, they haven't had a season with their overall team goaltending, their two top goalies, be this much better than the league average since Felix Potvin in 1993, statistically, with what they've done so far this year. That's how good they've been. The Leafs are second in the NHL in goals against right now. They're fourth in team save percentage, and that includes two bad games from Hildeby early in the year. Both their goalies are at .920 save percentages, which the Leafs have not had since the 60s. It was a Johnny Bauer season the last time they had two goalies with a .920 save percentage. Mm-hmm. The goalies just haven't been good. They've been outstanding. And I think that there's been one of the reasons I wanted to write the column the way that I did was I think there's been too much talk about there's a new coach and Chris Tanev, and I think those have been factors. But I think the biggest factor in them being second in the league in goals against is the goalies. They've both been fantastic, and it's become so routine that, and maybe I don't know. I mean, I know you guys have talked a lot about the goalies on Leafs Talk, but it's just become a thing with this team where you don't really need to. It's kind of like when Auston Matthews is scoring 69 goals in a season. It's like, yeah, he scored again. Yeah, he had another 2-goal game. The goalies have been so good through 25 games that it's just I think we've taken it for granted a little bit that it's just the way it's going to be now.
I don't think that it's taken for granted just simply because the workload that both players have had throughout their careers is going to remain a little bit of a question mark. I think that you're right in the sense of it probably doesn't get enough credit in comparison to Berube and the defense, but I do disagree with you where it comes to like that's overstated or not as impactful, because to me there is a true eye test component to this as well. I think that there is an intangible component to this as well, which is Chris Tanev has made a massive difference on this team. And where I can tell you, too, is the penalty kill, right? Like, the penalty kill has been incredible on this team. They are limiting chances in a different way. It is like night and day better from what it was a season ago. You look at where they sit. That's coaching. That's defensive players. And that has drastically impacted what these save percentages are as well. Like, I actually think it's just a very good balance of both of the two things, where you do have a team that is more responsible defensively. You do have a team that I think is more committed to it, that does block shots at a higher rate, that is more committed to that side of the puck, who is playing it better, who has a much better penalty kill, but then also the goaltenders are great. I don't think we need to like rob Peter to pay Paul in terms of figuring out who is the bigger part of this equation. I think it's like they found a real beautiful balance with it.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly both things are working in tandem. I just think it's really interesting when you look at the defensive statistics because, they're not a great team at controlling possession right now. They're not a great team at shot suppression. Like, there's still other teams are spending a lot of time in their zone. Like, they're really good at controlling the front of the net, and they're really good at blocking shots and taking the lanes away. And absolutely, that's going to help a goaltender. I'm not saying that it's not. I'm just saying that's, to me, has become the narrative of their season, is that Berube has come in and made them this defensive juggernaut. And statistically, it's hard to prove that. I think that they're better defensively, but they've had some seasons in the last 4 or 5 years where they've been really, really good defensively. And I think the argument that they have better personnel to play a defensive style and to put up those results is 100%, especially Tanev. I mean, he's the big one. But it's interesting, though, you take Jake McCabe out of the lineup, and I know they haven't played great teams the last 2 games, but that in other years would feel like a huge problem. Like he was, and now they can plug and play some other guys and still get pretty good results. And we'll see if that continues when they start to face some better teams than Chicago and Nashville. But they've looked good no matter who they've had out there on the blue line.
But I also think, though, like, again, if we're contextualizing this in terms of what they're being asked to do, when it's like, hey, puck possession time, one, like the amount of injuries that they've had to the forwards, right? So let's see what this normalizes to defensively when the team is at least closer to fully healthy, when they are not missing like, 6 forwards at a time and working in guys from the AHL. 2 is like, that's the style that they're playing now. And that's actually the style that the league is moving more towards, which is like, hey, dump and chase. Put it in deep. We're not going to play as much East-West hockey. We're not going to have the puck as much. And so some of those stats, I think, are going to get inflated the other way. The other part of it is, where are the shots coming from, right? Like when we're looking at these defensive metrics, how much better are the Leafs defending the front of the net and the most dangerous zones than they were in years prior? And that's where like the personnel and the coaching does matter to me, because they have gotten better in those areas. And the personnel, like unquestionably, night and day, completely different when it comes to, that area of the team specifically. And that's even taking into account that they haven't had a guy like Jani Hakanpää, who is supposed to provide an even bigger boost in that area. That even does come with a small or a sample of Simon Benoit really struggling to find his game in the early parts of the season. And I think a guy who's coming around, that does come with Oliver Ekman-Larsson playing a big chunk of the season on his offside, which he's clearly not as effective at. Like, there's so many reasons to be just like overly optimistic about not just what you've seen from them defensively, but also all those underlying pieces of it that are actually going to only make you feel even more emboldened as the year goes on. At least you would think so.
Yeah. And your point about missing players is, I mean, Auston Matthews is one of the hugest pillars of their defensive game and has been since he entered the league.
You're talking about him as a Selke guy last year. There was a real case.
Yeah, I mean, this year early on, even with him playing injured, it just, especially with, and it's, you talk about the penalty kill, like the results when Auston Matthews was on the penalty kill regularly were elite. Like they were some of the best of any forward in the NHL, and some of that he's out there with Marner, but he's just a very, very, very good defensive player. And you take your number one center out of the lineup. I mean, I've been really pleasantly surprised with how well Tavares has been able to step into that role and do that. But if they would have had Matthews the whole season, especially with him in better health, that would make an impact as well.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's talk about Matthews and Marner. So are we just abandoning all we saw from Matthews and Tavares, or sorry, from Marner and Tavares after a period of play? Where's your thought on this?
I don't know. I don't know what you do. Yeah. I mean, the thing is that Matthews and Marner really want to play together. Like they just, I kind of think you have to keep going back to Tavares and Marner just because the season is really about the playoffs, right? Like, I mean, it's great that they can make it look amazing in December against Nashville and they can turn it on and beat one of the worst teams in the league by just pumping a few goals past them and making it look easy and making it look pretty. But that's not what the season's about, and that's not what this team is about. And, you know, Marner has shown he's second in NHL scoring in the last, what's the number, 17 games, I think. I think he's got 29 points in 17 games. Natchez in Carolina is the only player that has more points than he does over that span. He just completely turned it on with Matthews out of the lineup. And I think you want to keep some of that mentality with Marner and with this team, that it's not just about the one line. They look like such a one line team when it's Matthews and Marner together, and you lose so much more of what Tavares can do. You know, if you're playing with Tavares with, I mean, who do they have him with early in the year? Pacioretty and McMahon or whatever. You're not going to get what you've gotten in the last 15 games. So unlocking more of Tavares and giving the team two really dangerous lines, that's what I'd be looking to do, even though they looked amazing yesterday.
I'm with you. I got caught up in the moment yesterday talking about it and going, well, you know, you have to go back to it next game because it was so good. And now you don't. You just nailed the biggest part of this is, what are you getting out of Tavares? So much of this season has been people screaming from the rooftops now that this guy should be on Team Canada, right? Like the whole fan base is mad that he was not put on this team. Like, or at least for the most part. I shouldn't say the whole fan base. But either way, Tavares has been great and Marner's been great. And that's been for an extended stretch. And I do want to see if that can continue. I do want to keep Tavares engaged with that. I do want to have that second line. And I also think that, to me, you can just continue with this formula where you're chasing a game, you're down a goal, and you shake things up and you try to get a little bit more offense and you shorten the bench and you start rolling those guys. But
they're going to be together on the power play. You're down a goal.
That's what I mean. It's not like they're never going to play together. They're going to get creative. They're going to have their offensive zone draws where they throw them out there. They're going to have games where one guy maybe isn't playing as much or going a little bit better, where they double shift them. And again, you're always going to have that at your disposal. I just don't think you start with it. I think that you make it something that is available to you rather than your first move. And again, if you want to go, like, this is the secondary part of this conversation for me, is when they get Domi back, they get Pacioretty back, they get McMahon back, right? You take those names. Where are they all going, right? Because it's an easier thing to do in a game like that where Marner's playing with Pontus Holmberg. And you say, well, God, this is not really working. So give him Matthews and he's going great. And then boom, 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 some of those Pontus Holmberg shots not even shots, missed pucks are going in the back of the net. Like, imagine Marner's making that drop pass to Holmberg yesterday where he's flying through the middle and Matthews tucks the second one.
I don't think Holmberg's doing the little one touch tip through the middle.
I think you could let him try to do that for the rest of his life in a simulation over and over and over again, and he would never be able to accomplish it. So that's...
Do you know what Holmberg's career high was in the Swedish league? He played 4 or 5 years there. His career high in goals. You know what it was?
Idea. No idea.
11 goals.
I was going to guess 8.
He had 9 one year and then 11 the next year.
Yeah.
He was a 6th-round pick. He was picked as an overage player. He was 19 when he was drafted as a 6th-round pick. Mm-hmm. And he didn't produce in the Swedish league until he was close to his mid-20s. Like, he was an older player. So it's not, everything that he's done has been an unbelievable development for the team, that he's even playing where he is. But it's just too much to ask of him. He's not an offensive player at this level.
No, he's not. But you know who is? The other guys the other guys that I mentioned. And so if you're talking about having Pacioretty, Domi, and McMahon, what have we learned about those 3 players? It's that if they're just down the lineup without one of those stars, you're not going to really notice them. Like Bobby McMahon, when he was not playing up with John Tavares and Mitch Marner, went like 12 games without a point, right?
Yeah.
He was not overly impactful. He's not your classic bottom 6 guy. What these guys are is... What has happened with Max Domi this year when he didn't play with William Nylander? And when he has not played with Auston Matthews, or how different he looked a season ago when he was playing down the lineup as a 3C versus what he looked like when he was Auston Matthews' wing. I want to see those guys play with the talent. And I think that the talent can bring a lot out of those dudes. I get Marner and Matthews works. I absolutely do. Guess what? Great players generally tend to be able to play with great players. It's just it's a thing that we've proven throughout time. Very rare circumstances where you look at two really awesome guys and say, oh, wow, they're not very good together. What I want to see is more out of a McMahon. What I want to see is more out of a Max Domi. What I want to see is more out of a Max Pacioretty. Go on down the line, and I don't think you're getting that if you're stuffing all those dudes down the lineup and telling them to drive one. I think that we've kind of figured that out, and that the more time that they spend trying to push that idea, the more they're just going to find that it's more of the same.
Yeah, and it comes back to the old conversation of they need another center down the lineup, right?
Sure. I mean, do they?
I think the other thing is that Domi is kind of like Marner light for Matthews.
Yep.
Like they're close, they're friends. The game is similar offensively anyway. Matthews likes playing with him, and he can create, the shot openings that Matthews needs. So, and Tavares and Marner, their line has been really good defensively and has been able to eat defensive zone starts. And so maybe, I mean, it sounds weird saying this, but maybe the Matthews line is you're leaning on it more offensively, and you're not counting on them to play up against other teams' top lines. I mean, they're going to get minutes against other teams' top lines because teams are going to want to play those players against Matthews, but maybe you're looking at some pairings, and it's, I don't know, do you go Nyes, Matthews, Domi, maybe? And then McMahon with Tavares and Marner probably makes the most sense. And then you try and, what you have left, you try and make something with that third and fourth line.
Here's what I would do if you got everybody back healthy tomorrow, right? Like you could you make a little magic spell, boom, everyone's back. What I would be trying is Nyes, Matthews, Domi, McMahon, with Marner and Tavares, and then I would have a third line where you try to see what Fraser Minton looks like and Max Pacioretty look like with William Nylander.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then try to see what Fraser Minton can do for you and whether that's a real solution there. I do think that you still want to try and add a center no matter what. Like, I almost don't even care how great Fraser Minton plays. If he's like so undeniably good for the rest of the season, cool, bring him as the 4C. You still got to go out and try to get somebody with more experience, and you can't have a situation where you get in the playoffs and Minton looks completely overwhelmed and then you're reminded, oh my God, he's a child. He's out here during such a critical season. So to me, there is really no realistic scenario where I'm going to feel like, well, Fraser Minton is an undeniable playoff piece, right? I don't see it. But what I do want to find out is how good is he now, and what does he look like when he's playing with some of the better guys? Because I talked about this yesterday with Craig Simpson. He made a great point of this guy has looked the exact same at every level. So you could complain about, hey, he didn't score enough in junior, or maybe he's not Mr. Offensive Upside. Like, you watch him in junior, you watch him with the Canadian junior team, you watch him with the AHL, you watch him with the Toronto Maple Leafs, same guy all the way across. See how long it lasts.
I don't think he's going anywhere. Like, they don't have to. They don't even have to get rid of a Holmberg or a Robertson or something to make room for him right now. Like, they've, with Kampf out and Hakanpää out, they've got cap room, they've got guys on LTIR, they've got roster space. I mean, even if McMahon and Domi and Pacioretty all come back, you can send down Alex Nylander, you could send down Grabenkin, Rafai is up right now because he's come in with, so I mean,
but that's McCabe, so it's like that goes pretty quick.
Yeah. But basically they've got McCabe's not on LTIR or anything like that, right? So like they've got 3 Marleys they can send down and bring the forwards back, and they'll have to put guys in the press box, but so what? So I think, I know he didn't score like the other games, but I thought last night was Minton's best game. I thought it was the most comfortable that he looked. I thought it was the biggest impact that he made. It was great that they moved him up the lineup and he looked good again. I think he had 5 shots on goal. He only played 13-23 or something like that.
Yeah, but he played so much the third period. That was the really eye-opening thing is you've seen Berube tighten up with some of these younger guys, right? When the game gets late, hey, shorten the bench. And then with Fraser Minton, he went, you know what? You're playing more. And again, they're injured and they're missing bodies, but he played great in that role.
Yeah. So, all that is to say, I think he's sticking around at least until Kampf comes back, and Kampf's on LTIR, so it's going to be at least 2-3 more weeks, and it's a busy schedule, and then you just keep reassessing. And if Minton in 2 or 3 weeks is playing like he did last night, then you got to waive somebody or trade somebody for a draft pick or something, and like you said, keep him around. As long as he's showing that he belongs, then I don't think there's any reason you have to send him down.
Yeah, I think that Kampf takes a little bit too much heat just because, he was essentially signed to be defensive shutdown guy. He was also a product of circumstance where they just were not, like, they lost Ryan O'Reilly. They were completely thin in the middle. The market didn't have a lot of centermen, and he had a bit of leverage there, so they gave him too much term and a little bit too much money, right? I didn't think it was as drastic of an overpay as some people thought it to be. But right now, one of the things I think that we've learned pretty conclusively is we've done all these talks about Robertson, right? You flip him, it's like, who cares? He makes nothing, and there's really no, like, lost opportunity cost. And even if he wants to be traded and because you're sitting him in the press box, like, who cares? I just don't think that it's going to be enough of a ruffled feather. The thing that is very apparent to me now with the emergence of Minton and the way that Dewar plays is you got to try to offload the Kampf money this season. Like, you're trying to move him this year ahead of the deadline to give you some kind of financial flexibility moving forward. Like, he's genuinely the most odd man out that you could possibly have on the entire roster. It's just a matter of can you move him because he's got the limited no move one and what a team's willing to do. But yeah, I think you would be able to. I have to imagine you'd be able to.
And 2 more years on the deal. But yeah, I think you can move him. With so many teams looking for centers, I think you'd be able to move him, and you probably get nothing back, right? But
who cares? You get cap space. That's not nothing.
You look at their cap situation next year too, and like it's really tight. Like, they're not going to be able to keep that money. So there's no way. I can't see any scenario where he's back after this season, no matter what. So. And you're right. Dewar's been great. Lawrence has been great. I mean, the PK. You look at the PK data. Lawrence is right up as one of the best forwards in the league. So, like, they've got shutdown guys who are making a third of what Kampf makes.
That's exactly it. This is not an indictment to me of Kampf. I've accepted who Kampf is. It's a matter of wins above replacement on the contract, and you have to be this way. This is like the baseball thing where. You more highly covet a Spencer Horowitz because he makes no money and allows you to spend it in other areas because he's able to perform at a wins above replacement level. And that's what you're getting from all these guys. So there's no need to pay the wins above replacement guy in Kampf the $2.4 million or whatever he's making when you do have the Connor Dewars and you do have the Fraser Mintons in their stead who can provide basically the exact same thing. Maybe a little worse in some areas, maybe a little bit better in others, but for a fraction of the cost. It's just a no-brainer with the way that this team is set up, period. You got to move them.
Yeah, and speaking of wins above replacement, Ryan Reeves has become that guy too at almost 1.35.
He's not going to be on the playoff roster, though. I think everybody with a brain knows that. But
I think when the 3 forwards come back, he shouldn't be on the roster, right? Like, he should be the guy that's sitting, and because it's going to get kind of crowded.
Yeah.
I guess your option is you're going to have to sit 2 forwards when not when everyone's back, but when Pacioretty, McMahon, and Domi are back, you're going to have to sit 2 forwards, and it's Robertson and Holmberg or Reeves. And if it was up to me, I would be sitting Reeves a lot of those games.
I just think what you do is you have a combination of all 3. Like, I don't think Ryan Reeves is going to be in the lineup every night. I don't think Nick Robertson's going to be in the lineup every night. I don't think Pontus Holmberg's going to be in the lineup every night. Right? Like, you're just kind of cycling through those 3, and it's going to be matchup dependent. I don't think that there's really anybody left who's defending the need for Ryan Reeves to be on the team anymore, right? Like, but I also don't think it's a situation. What you've seen that? I think it's a total straw man.
There are some corners on social media that
guess what? Most of the North America has social media. Like, most Leaf fans have Twitter. So yeah, you're always going to find the odd person, but it's mostly a straw man. Like, I was as big of a proponent of the Reeves signing as anybody in terms of the, positivity towards it. And I really value the types of intangibles that a guy like that can bring, and that kind of stuff in the game. And even I'm on the corner of like, hey, it's over, right? Like,
he's 37.
That's what I mean. Like, I don't know. There's zero problem here to me. Like, and you even look at the team's record when he's played versus when he hasn't, and you're like, all right, this probably isn't all him, but it's not. You can't really completely ignore it. Either way, I think that he's not on the playoff roster, but for the rest of the regular season, you're not just sending him to Robidas Island and having him sit in the press box for the rest of it. Like, he's going to play games. So
unless you need the cap space, right? Like, before the deadline, unless you can't move Kampf and you got to make some hard decisions, then
That's a different conversation, though, than this one, which is like the interim versus the future, where it's like, to me, you got to move the Kampf money because it's just an easier guy to move. I guess it's easier to just waive Reeves, but what do you even save at that point?
I think it's like 450, 400K, something like that.
So I guess if you're super tight up against it, you do that. But as of right now, it's fine. Like, it's whatever. Have him in a lineup. Don't make him a staple. Don't make it something that it's immovable. And sign or trade between him and those other guys that I mentioned up and kind of down. All right. Anything else?
No, I don't think so. I mean, the schedule is just jammed right now, so you're going to you're getting to work out on the Leafs talk. Yeah,
Yep. I'm working. I'm grinding. Christmas break is going to be very, 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 very welcomed. I will tell you that.
They got lots of games though. You got to keep going, don't you?
No. I'm off during the Christmas break. We take Leafs talk off during the Christmas break. Come on.
But what am I gonna watch when I'm drinking my eggnog though? I need my Leafs talk.
Here's what I have to say to anybody that needs it over the Christmas break. Go do something else. Go for a beautiful walk outside. Go take in the stars. Go have another glass of eggnog. Go watch one of the million NFL pods that are going to be out there because there's now NFL is Christmas. They've taken it from the NBA, the one day that they had. I don't care what you do with your time. Just don't bother me. I will be resting so that I can do the incredible, the deep stretch at the end of the season. It's a lot of games. It's 82 of them. All right. I'm like a player.
No.
I'm injured. I'm on IR. All right. I'm load management. I'm going to Germany and I'm getting whatever in my shot into my body the same way. I need it.
When you started doing it and said what you were doing, I was like, are you sure? Because I remember early in my career, I had to write every game, and it's just, it really melts your brain. It's late nights. But I tell you, though, it's become such a staple for me, and I'm not just saying that because I'm on this show.
Thanks,
every single game, at the end of the game, I wait for it to come on, and I watch you guys and laugh at,
Well, that's
Sam
what makes it easy, too.
Sam going on about Holmberg last night was great. It's good entertainment, and the market needed it. Like, they're just, post-game had just died as kind of like a analysis art form, both in print and on the radio. So it's great to see it come back.
Yeah, thanks, man. No, I appreciate it. And like I said, I think it's a lot easier to do when I'm doing it with one of my, all-time best friends. So I kind of there's a lot of nights where I go, hey, this sucks. And I'm like, what would you be doing? Probably watching the game with Sam. So yeah, it's kind of hard to make it too hard. But yeah, it's laborious. And I think that it's been a good year so far. So hopefully we can keep it running. And I always appreciate the support. Anyways, I'll let you go, buddy. That's enough compliments to me. I will talk to you later. Thanks, pal.
Yep.
Cheers, buddy. James Mirtle, senior writer at The Athletic.